Good morning. We're happy to welcome you to SPG's webinar entitled Assessing the Sustainability of Pulse Crop Intensified Cropping Systems. My name is Allison Fletcher and I'm a research project manager for Saskatchewan Pulse Growers, and I'm going to be the host for today's session. For those in attendance today, if you provided either a CCA or a CCSC number at the time of registration, you will receive credits for the webinar today. After the webinar concludes, a recording will be available on the website, so be sure to watch for an email from SPG on how to access that. At the end of the presentation, there's going to be a live question and answer discussion. So if you do have questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll address them at that time. There's also a couple handouts and resources that are relevant to today's session that you can access right through the GoToWebinar on your dashboard. SPG is guided by a grower-elected board of directors that's driven to create opportunities for profitable growth for Saskatchewan pulses. Two of SPG's 5 key result areas relate to research, development, and extension with the purpose of increasing yields of established pulse crops and promoting the adoption of new pulse crop options. Today's session focuses on a topic that supports these key result areas. We also recognize the value that agronomists bring to growers in Saskatchewan, and that you are a key to spreading the latest technical knowledge and widening the reach of this information to growers. So we thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We are pleased to be joined by Dr. Kui Liu, a research scientist at the Swift Current Research and Development Centre with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. There, he conducts collaborative studies with researchers from research institutes, universities, and industries at regional and national levels. As an agronomist, Kui's research focuses on developing management practices that improve yield, resource use efficiency, and the resilience of cropping systems. Welcome, Kui.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alison, for your introduction, and welcome everyone for my presentation. Today, I talk about a project assessing the sustainability of post-crop intensified cropping systems. This project was initiated by Dr. Yan Taigan. I took over after his retirement, and thanks for her leadership for this project. First of all, I acknowledge the collaborators for this project, and then there are collaborators from Agri-Food Canada, universities, as well as from provincial governments. And we have a multidisciplinary team. This allows us to do the assessing the cropping system in a system way. I also appreciate the technical support. Without them, this project couldn't have been done. And there are several postdocs and graduate students have involved in these projects. Thanks financial support from SPG, ADF, and AAFC. So this is a cropping system study. So what is a cropping system? Cropping system includes 3 components in general. They are crop varieties and crop sequence, as well as crop management. And cropping system interact with surrounding environments such as soil and climate, and provide essential ecosystem services such as food and pest control, nutrients, cycling, and of course carbon sequestration and biodiversity conservation. Because cropping system interact with the soil and environment complicatedly. So when we evaluate cropping system, we need to use multiple indicators such as productivity, profitability, environmental quality, as well as resilience. So talk about cropping systems. Cropping systems are dynamic and always change over times. For example, in Western Canada, we have conventional wheat monoculture and then gradually change to wheat fallow in the semi-arid region, and then when canola become a big player, and wheat canola is a dominant cropping system even right now. Not so long ago, when post crop become a major player, and post crop intensified crop rotation is a part of this cropping system, particularly in the semi-arid region. in the future, it's clearly diversified cropping system is a main direction for cropping system. There are many benefits of diversified cropping systems. If used properly, and the diversified cropping system could increase yields and stabilize net incomes. And also, diversified cropping system could increase the resource use efficiency as a result. So different root systems, different nutrients requirements, different water consumptions. And it could also effectively for pest management, such as weeds, disease, and insects. And diversified cropping system, it could also improve soil health through modify the soil microbial community nutrient cycling and different types of carbon residual input to enhance the soil carbon sequestration. Of course, diversified cropping systems could enhance the resilience of cropping systems to biotic and abiotic stresses. Of course, there are some challenges for crop diversification. For example, you need more equipment to seed, harvest your different crops. That means additional investment. And also you need more knowledge to manage different crops in diversified cropping systems. And also there may not many crops available for your local climate and soil conditions. Producers need to choose the right crops to fit the local conditions when it comes to crop diversification. Another challenge could be the availability of registered chemicals, is particularly for the small acreage crops. They may not available for some crops. And for producers, they maybe need to prepare that diversified cropping system might lower their profits in the first several years, although they have long-term benefits. Anyway, pulse crops in Saskatchewan play an important role in crop diversification. You see here, lentil is it's a large seeded area, about 1.5 million hectares, and account for 90% of all lentils produced in Canada. Lentil is mainly in Saskatchewan region, and pea is more adopted to a wilder region on the Canadian prairies. And chickpea is a smaller acreage pulse crop, is mainly in this semi-arid, in this dry region. So pulse crop has lots of benefits, and for producers, and they like the nitrogen fixation. That's benefits because they can reduce the fertilizer and use efficiency and enhance the nitrogen cycling. Because the reduced nitrogen fertilizer use, they can effectively reduce NO emissions, reduce greenhouse gas emission. Because of these nitrogen benefits, normally cropping system involving post crop could increase the yields of the cropping system, particularly for the following crop. And post crop could also stabilize economic returns because of diversifying the cropping system. In this region, oilseeds and cereal crops are dominant crop, and particularly for the semi-arid region where water is a major limiting factor for crop production. And post crop requires a relatively less water compared with oilseeds or cereal. So post crop fits in this semi-arid region very well. There are some cons for post crop. For example, post crop normally has a lower crop residual returns. So that may cause some concerns of soil health. Another thing is pests. That's maybe another challenge for producers when it comes to grow pulse crops. Anyway, there's a larger benefits compared with the drawback of pulse crops, and producers might intensify the pulse crop in rotation. However, their lack of knowledge about the post-crop intensified cropping systems and how this post-crop intensified rotation affect the system performance, such as your yield, your soil health, disease and resource use efficiency, and carbon footprint, as well as economic returns. So producers might want to know how different pulse crop type and different pulse frequency in rotation and crop diversification with pulse crop, how does this management practices affect these multiple cropping system indicators? So the objective of this project is to determine the benefits and the drawback of post-crop intensified rotations. So we have different objectives. We focus on crop yield, resource use efficiency, that's nitrogen use efficiency, and precipitation use efficiency. And also we will deal with root rot disease a little bit. And there are components of soil health, focus on soil carbon and nitrogen. Of course, we will determine how this post-crop rotation affects carbon footprints and economic returns. So for this specific research, we have different components. The major component is a plow scale study, which have 3 sites at 8 years. We have field survey components dealing with Aphanomyces root rots, and also we have greenhouse and field pulse study. We mainly deal with root rot disease. This plow scale study is a major component of this project. That's also today's focus. For this plow scale study, we experiment design, we have 14 treatments, is here a rotation, have 14 treatments. So based on the years of pulse crop in the 4-year rotation basis, we have 0, 1, 2, 3 years of pulse crops. And also in addition to, we have a diversified crop rotation. So mainly we have 5 different crops in this project. One is wheat, another 3 types of pulse crops, including pea, chickpea, and lentil. And also for the diversified rotation, we have mustard in this cropping system. So for this 2 years of pulse cropping 4-year rotation, we could have the pea wheat. We could also have a different pulse crops such as pea wheat, lentil wheat. So this study was conducted at 3 sites, one at Brooks in Alberta, another 2 at Civil Current. So this is a field management. We follow what the producer typically do. For example, we use the glyphosate to control the weights per seedings, and we use certified seeds each year and apply inoculants to pulse crops. Pulse crops do not receive any nitrogen. In this study, the wheat crop receive 80 kilogram nitrogen is a flat rate. For in-season management, such as disease, weeds, and insects, we scout the plots twice or 3 times a week. And when it's needed, we apply the pesticides to control these pests. For today's presentation, I will talk about the crop yields and post-crop disease and nitrogen use efficiency, precipitation use efficiency, and soil carbon and nitrogen dynamics, and also carbon footprints, of course, the economic returns. So for crop production, this is a major component of this project. In order to answer the question how the yield was affected by pulse types, pulse frequency, and crop diversification, I select 3 different groups. For example, for these pulse types, I select 4 rotations. One is chickpea wheat. The second is lentil wheat, and then pea wheat, in addition to wheat monoculture. So this will give us the answers how the pulse type affect the cropping system performance. For a P frequency, for a pulse frequency effect, I use P as example. I select 4 different crop rotations. This is a 1-year P in 4-year rotation and 2-year P in 4-year rotation. This is a 3-year P in 4-year rotation, in addition to this wheat monoculture. So for these 2 category, and it's just pulse crops and wheat crop. So for a third group, in terms of crop diversification, I select 4 different treatments. You have 1 year, 1 crop, 2 and 3 and 4 crops in 4-year rotations. This one we focus on lentil wheat system because lentil wheat system is more popular at the current area. But we will increase the crop diversity to see how does it affect the cropping system performance. For all these 3 assessments, I use 2 methods to assess. One, I use the test crop, that's the wheat in year 8, because this is a 2 rotation cycle. This is a 4-year rotation. We do 2 rotation cycle. In the year 8 is wheat. I determine how the wheat affected by the different treatments. The second method is using crop at the cropping system level, because the different crop rotation have different crops, and different crops have different yield potential and different economic values. So in order to compare at the cropping system level, so I convert the yields into a durum weight equivalent yield, which is calculated based on the price of the crop and also the crop yield. So this way, the comparison between the treatments at the cropping system level should be reasonable. So let's look at the results. So this is, first of all, look at how pulse type affects the crop yields. And again, I select these three types, the 3 rotation corresponding to chickpea, lentil, and pea rotation. This is in the wheat phase. This at the system level, I use annualized system yield. First, look at the wheat. At the wheat phase, we see the chickpea actually produce a lower yield on wheat compared with wheat monoculture. That kind of surprise. The reason could be in this rotation, and then the chickpea crop is a long season crop and have deeper roots. They might use up the soil water for the coming wheat crop. So in a dry year, and that may be reduce the crop yield of following wheat. So for lentil and pea crop, both lentil and pea are relatively shallow root system, and they may conserve some water for the following wheat crop, and also they produce the nitrogen benefits. That's why they have a slightly higher wheat yield. So this is at the cropping system level. We will see that at the cropping system level, and this pulse crop include the rotation increase the system productivity. We see this lentil wheat produce the highest system yield. Please be noted that this system yield is not just the grain yield. The cropping, the crop price is another factor. This is why here the lentil is the most productive at the cropping system level, and at this wheat level, and this pea is more productive. So we move on to the pulse frequency. I use the P frequency as an example. So I choose this for crop rotation, has 0, 1, 2, and 3-year pulses in the rotation. We found very clear at both this wheat phase and also at this cropping system phase, when you increase the frequency of pulses, you increase the productivity. This demonstrates the nitrogen benefits of P to the cropping system. And then we look at how crop diversification affects the yields. So when we increase the diversification, we see these benefits of the crop productivity, both at this weed phase and also at the cropping system level. But one thing we notice that the most diversified cropping system, they have 4 different crops, doesn't have the best yields. And same thing here, and this most diversified rotation doesn't produce the highest yields. We see the benefits, but for producers, you may need, when it comes to crop diversification and crop selection may be most important to maximize the crop diversification. So this is the yield. When it comes to yield stability, I use coefficient of variation as an indicator to indicate how the crop stable, indicate the crop stability. A lower CV means they're more stable. A higher CV means they're less stable. Here we see that the most diversified cropping system have 4 crops in 4-year rotation. They have lowest CV, they are most stable. And on the other side here, the wheat monoculture is these stable systems. So this demonstrates the benefits of crop diversification in terms of crop stability. So this is a crop yields. And let's move to the root rot disease. We know root rot disease is right now is a major issues for pulse production. It's very challenging. We did a field survey across Saskatchewan. We see here in this survey, seems like this pathogen is everywhere in this province, even in the rangeland, they also have this pathogen. So what does that mean? That means when the environment variable factors become favorable to these pathogens, and once you have the right host crop, that could cause the root rot disease outbreak. So producers, they need to take some measurements, some measures to prevent or treat root rot disease. One of the methods, management practice could be use soil microbes to treat the root rot disease. So this is how this lab work we are conducting. Basically, there are millions of soil microbes in the soil, and some are beneficial and some are bad guys. We try to use a beneficial bacteria to fight against this pathogen. So to do that, and we isolate the bacteria antagonists and then inoculate to the plants. This is done in a greenhouse settings. So this is the control, this is the pathogen, they kill the peas right away. And this one, we have the pathogen, we add the bacteria antagonist, so the crop, this pea survived very well. This is 15 days, and this is 85 days. It looks like it's a very promising in the greenhouse settings. But when we move to a next level to the field, use this kind of containers, we didn't see the effectiveness of these antagonists. So there has a long way to go to use these methods. Another management practice for root rot disease is using diversified crop rotation. Here you see for this chickpea and then the root rots reduced significantly when we use more diversified cropping system. I use, for example, this like the chickpea monoculture, and this is a chickpea wheat, and this a lentil wheat chickpea. And the same thing for the lentil. When you increase the diversification, you reduce the root rot severity. Same thing for pea. So this clearly indicates that crop diversification works for disease management. So in general, for disease management, we need to use integrated pest management practice. Use all options available. If there's a disease-resistant cultivar, that may be the best choice. Let's move on to precipitation use efficiency. We know in the semi-arid region, precipitation is a major limiting factor for crop production, and effectively use the precipitation is a key for crop production. So first, we look at the cumulative rainfall during the growing season from May to August. It's about 220 millimeters on average, long-term average. Here you see since 2007 and to 2020, these 4 years in a row, the precipitation is lower than the long-term average. And 2021, we know, is even worse. So this relatively dry year in a row could pose a huge risk for crop production. So let's see how this precipitation use efficiency. First, look at the pulse type effects. We see here it's quite similar as the yield responses. And we see the chickpea has the lowest PUE and the pea has the highest PUE. You notice this chickpea rotation. And as I mentioned, chickpea is a long growing season and also had a deep roots. So in this rotation, you have always deep root crops. But in the other two rotation, you have a shallow roots, deep roots, shallow root, deep roots. So they alternate. And then there will probably more effectively use the water. The same thing at the cropping system level. When the different crop has a different precipitation use efficiency. At the cropping system level, we found that this different crop, they have a 5 to 51% increase of PUE compared with the wheat monoculture. But at the wheat crop phase, we saw probably like 3% to 18% increase. So this means at the system level, we see a large benefits compared with at the cropping system level, at the wheat crop phase. So we'll move on to see how the P frequency affect PUE. At both the wheat phase and cropping system level, we say that when you increase the P frequency, you increase the PUE. That shows the benefits of a post-cropping cropping system. For crop diversification with post-crop, similar as yield responses, we see the benefits of this crop diversification, but the most diversified cropping system may not produce the highest PUE. This is correct at the cropping system level. So for producers, I think select the right crop is most important when it comes to crop diversification. So this is a precipitation use efficiency. We didn't really consider the water in soil profile. So the next research topic could be see how this water in the soil profile, how does that affect the water use efficiency, particularly in post-crop intensified rotation. Then move on to fertilizer use efficiency. For post-crop, as I mentioned, the nitrogen is one of the biggest benefits for producers. And nitrogen can be fixed during the post-crop phase and also provides additional benefits to the following crops. And also nitrogen fixation can affect the soil nitrogen benefits, nitrogen dynamics too. So for the nitrogen fixation, there are lots of studies that have been done to quantify the the capacity of post-crop to fix nitrogen. In this study, we are look at how the crop stubbles affect biological nitrogen fixation. You see here there are huge difference among the 3 years. Post-crop, like in 2018, there are huge difference between the two stubble treatments. In general, we see that P follow cereals has a greater nitrogen fixation compared with canola stubble. This might be due to how the previous crop affects the soil moisture content, and also how the previous crop affected residual nitrogen levels. So this is a long-term study for this project. We have 8 years already. So one question we hadn't answered is, how does the duration of the crop rotation affect the BNF? This may help producers to optimize the nitrogen fixation of post-crop intensified rotation. So let's look at the fertilizer use efficiency. I use this time I only compare the difference at the weight phase. We see here the post-tap effects. Same thing, we see the chickpea involved rotation has a lower fertilizer nitrogen use efficiency, and the P has a higher fertilizer use efficiency. This related to your different root system, and also maybe a different nitrogen fixation capacity. It's similar results as a response to yield. So this is the P frequency effects. Here we see you increase the P frequency, and then you have a higher nitrogen use efficiency. That's reasonable because you have more P in the rotation that have more nitrogen fixed, and then they have a better nitrogen benefits that will improve the fertilizer and use efficiency. So this is a diversified crop diversification effects on fertilizer and use efficiency. Similar trends, we see the benefits of crop diversification, but the highly diversified cropping system may not produce the highest fertilizer use efficiency. Anyway, this is just some indicators for the crop diversification effects. And if you use system approach later, I will show there are some benefits of crop diversification. So let's move on to soil health. We know that post-crop residue is relatively low, and then that might cause some concern of soil carbon and nitrogen in the soil. So in this study, we determine soil nitrogen and soil carbon changes. First of all, let's talk about the nitrogen. I do determine the partial nitrogen balance based on the fertilizer and inputs and nitrogen fixation by post crops and minus the nitrogen removed due to crop harvest. Here, I want to show how crop diversification affects the nitrogen balance and the soil mineral. You see here is a wheat monoculture. They have the highest partial N benefits, but when it comes to the soil mineral nitrogen, has the lowest mineral nitrogen. Why? Because in this wheat monoculture, fertilizer N is a main nitrogen source, and this fertilizer N is subjected to losses such as N2O emissions, leaching, or runoff. But in other rotations, you have the post crop, so the nitrogen fixed by post crop, the residuals return to the field. The mineralization of the residual, they will produce a higher soil mineral nitrogen. So this is why here we saw a diversified rotation has a higher nitrogen, mineral nitrogen compared with the wheat monoculture. So these are the benefits of diversified crop rotation. So here we see how post type affects soil mineral. So we determine this mineral nitrogen in the spring of the second, first, and 8th years. So in these years, all crops are wheat. So in the spring, we determine the the mineral, and we found it's very clear the benefits of this post-crop included rotation. They have a higher nitrogen compared with wheat monoculture in all years. But we didn't see the difference between the three different post crops at all levels in all years. So this means these three different post crop have the similar nitrogen benefits to the cropping system. And also we did the potentially mineralizable nitrogen among the three different types of crop rotation. We also see they provide similar nitrogen. They have the similar capacity to provide nitrogen. This is another evidence that these three types of different post crop have the similar nitrogen benefits to the cropping system. Then move on to soil carbon. This time I use crop diversification to demonstrate how crop diversification affects soil carbon changes. We know like straw carbon is a major carbon input. Here we saw this straw carbon input for the wheat monoculture is higher than the other three crops, which include post crops. However, this high straw carbon didn't convert to high soil carbon because soil carbon is not affected only by the quantity, but also affected by the quality of the straw input. These three rotations have a post crop, and then the post residual has a higher nitrogen content that might change the soil microbial activities and maybe stabilize the carbon faster. And other results, we see this post crop included rotation has a higher soil carbon level after 8 years compared with the wheat monoculture, even though they have a relatively lower straw carbon input. So this also indicates that the crop diversification use post crop could enhance your soil carbon level. Let's move on to environmental impacts. This time we talk about the greenhouse gas emission and carbon footprint. So first of all, we see how post type affect greenhouse gas emission. We measure the greenhouse gas emission over 4 years, and this at the wheat crop phase is among the different post crop rotations. It's clear that this monocrop or wheat, they have the highest greenhouse gas emission. And we see there's some difference among these pulse types. Like for example, the pea wheat system has a lower N2O emissions. By the way, all these crops wheat receive the same amount of nitrogen. So this lower N2O emission could mean that in this system, in the pulse wheat system, the nitrogen use efficiency is higher than this wheat monoculture. In terms of pulse frequency, we didn't see much difference about this N2O emission among these three different pulse frequency. 1, 2, 3 year pulse frequency may not affect your N2O emission too much, but reduce the N2O emission significantly compared with the wheat monoculture. So in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of crop diversification, it's very clear that you increase the crop diversity, you reduce N2O emissions. So this is a very convincing results. And then we are confident that when you increase the crop diversification, and then you will reduce greenhouse gas emission. That's probably the good crop management practices to reduce greenhouse gas emission. And for this study, we have thousands of data points, and then we found that the high soil, we see this some peaks into flux, and this might be related to high soil moisture during the early spring as a result of freeze-thaw process. So from crop management practice, if in your region the winter crop is it could survive the winter, and then maybe it's a good option and to reduce greenhouse gas emission and use the available nitrogen in the early spring season. So this at the wheat crop phase, at the 4-year crop rotation level, we found that for pulse types, we see the difference of the NO emissions among the different types of crops, and P are more effective compared with lentils. And for frequency effects, we also say we will increase the frequency, and the NO emission decreased, and then further increase the frequency, the NO may bump up because they have high frequency of Ps. They may have have a higher NO emissions as a result of the mineralization of P straws that will increase the NO emissions. In general, we found that when you increase the P frequency in this rotation, you will see a decrease in carbon footprint. That means the pulse crop are very effective in terms of reducing carbon footprint. So study has shown that including our pulse crop in rotation can effectively reduce carbon footprint to the carbon neutral level in wheat production. So including the pulse crop in the wheat cropping system not only increase the yield economics returns, but also reduce the greenhouse gas emission. That's like a win-win-win situation. Next is about economic returns. We did a complicated economic analysis. We found this lentil crop rotation produced a higher yield. Probably it's the regional results, and also because the lentil price may be higher during the crop season. But this do raise some concerns because this too high intensity frequency of pulses that might cause some future problems such as disease. I do want to emphasize that this diversified crop rotation also provide a good results in terms of their returns. So this is like based on 8-year study, and do we need a longer term pulse crop rotation? Here's a clue. I use the chickpea as an example. From left to right, we will increase the crop diversity. In the first 4-year rotation cycle, you didn't see much benefits of the highly diversified rotation. But when you move to the second rotation cycle, these benefits of the diversified rotation showing up. It seems similar trends for the returns. So basically, this means a longer term rotation is needed. Based on literatures, normally you need 2 or 3 cycles of rotation to fairly assess the true effects of cropping systems. So I used the individual indicators for the above presentation, and how about to put all these indicators together, may they provide a better picture of cropping system assessment. So in this case, I use a wheat phase. I use different indicators such as the yields, nitrogen use efficiency, water use efficiency, energy productivity returns, and carbon footprint. So here you see at the wheat crop phase, you increase the diversity from red to blue and to green. You see a bigger benefits, and then the environment, the negative effects become lower. So the similar situation you can find at the cropping system level, or you can find a bigger benefits at the cropping system level compared with the wheat phase level. So here is another way to show the results. This environmental index, such as carbon footprint, this is the productive and resource use efficiency. We see here this monocrop are separate from the other three. That means they are quite different. But here you see this is 3 and 4 crop rotation, rotation. It didn't separate. And here the same thing. What does it mean? It means the over-diversified cropping system may not necessary to achieve the maximum benefits of cropping system. We know, one core strategy for resilient cropping system is to increase the diversity. And post-crop play important role in diversify the cereal and the oilseeds cropping system provide functional diversity. So use post-crop, we could further diversify the current wheat canola cropping system to enhance the cropping system resilience. So for this project, we also did lots of knowledge transfer activities. For example, we have field tours and conference and media interviews and talks and paper publication to make these research results become available. And also there are several postdocs and graduate students also trained through this project. With that, I will with that, I come to the take-home message for the conclusion. We found that pea had a large yield benefits than lentil and chickpea, but lentil had a greater net returns. So these are just the two indicators. In order to assess the cropping system, we need more indicators to have a better assessment. And we found that pea, chickpea, lentil, they provide similar leveraging benefits in the cropping systems. So when increasing the frequency of pulse crops, they provide the short-term benefits, but caution should be taken because they may cause a disease in the long term. As I mentioned, normally 2 or 3 years crop rotation is needed to better assess the true crop rotation effects. We also found that most diversified rotation may not provide the best yield benefits, but yield is just one of indicators. They do provide other benefits like yield stability and the disease control and soil health like carbon footprint, that sort of benefits. So for producers, if you could choose the right crops, you could maximize your success in crop diversification. So this finding also showing like a large benefits of crop rotation at the system level compared as a crop phase level. This may provide, over the years, may provide insights of the crop performance compared with the crop phase level. We should consider crop rotation as a long-term investment. So producers need to balance the short-term economic gains and long-term sustainabilities. Again, this needs the multiple indicators for this optimizing the cropping, post-crop intensified rotation. We know that diversification is the key for a resilient cropping system. The post-crop play an important role in this crop diversification, particularly in these wheat canola cropping systems. We believe that post-crop could help achieve this sustainable crop intensification on the Canadian prairies. With that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kui. That was a great presentation. Thank you for your time. We do have some time for some questions now, and we have a few that have popped into the questions box. So this is your last chance call to enter your question there. But maybe just a couple of short, quick questions here first. The first one was, which method did you use to measure the water use efficiency or precipitation use efficiency in the trial?
Basically, the precipitation was calculated from the seeding to the physiological maturity. So that we have the precipitation. The precipitation yield efficiency was calculated as the grain yields per unit of precipitation.
Thank you. The next question here is, would you suspect that faba bean would have a higher post-crop nitrogen benefit compared to the other post-crops in this study?
Yeah, I haven't done this faba bean yet. Consider faba bean is probably the highest nitrogen fixer, and then the residuals may produce the higher nitrogen, and then the residual decomposition might provide a higher nitrogen. Yes, I assume that's true.
And then another quick question regarding why was mustard chosen as the additional crop in the diversified rotation? Yeah, so just some background on the choice of that crop.
Yeah, I think when they initiated the project, this study focused on semi-arid region, and canola and mustard are two oilseed crops. Mustard is more drought resistant. Probably that's the main reason we choose mustard as in this crop rotation. Also, mustard is a smaller ecoregion crop, and then may fit well into diversifying cropping system.
Okay, question here on how were you measuring the carbon footprint? Which tools or methods did you use?
Carbon footprint measurements, we use, I think, IPCC model, and then consider basically your CO2 emissions from fertilizer, from crop residual, from even farm management, such as fuel operation, pesticides, and was even like the manufacturing of these chemicals. It's like the whole process of the cropping system. This is based on a model. It's the detailed methods, I think, is published by Yantai for several papers.
And then a quick question here about any field trials that you have planned for the upcoming season, so 2023, on Aphanomyces in particular, if you have any work going in on that.
For this trial, the funding is end, but we try to we applied the funding, and right now we are waiting for a decision. If it gets funded, this one we will continue. There's another component, have a proposal submitted. This trial is a part of that proposal to assess Aphanomyces rerun disease. It depends on the funding availability.
That looks like all the questions that have shown up. So we want to thank you again. That does wrap up the session for today. The recording is going to be posted on our website. You'll receive an email on how to access that. And you'll also receive an email with a link to a survey so you can share your feedback with us. Your opinion does help us decide what types of research and content to deliver to ensure that you have some valuable extension opportunities and helps us to continuously improve. Lastly, just keep an eye out for some information that's going to be coming soon about SPG's winter pulse meetings. We're going to be making stops in Regina, Assiniboia, Elrose, and Melfort throughout January, February, and March. So there will be more information and some registration links that will be sent out in the coming weeks regarding those meetings. So with that, I'd just like to thank everyone, and especially you, Kui, for the presentation, and hope everyone has a great day.
Okay, thank you. Bye.